8 craziest drunk guests Johnny Carson ever had on his show. For 30 years, Johnny Carson was the total king of late-night TV. He brought the biggest Hollywood stars right into everyone's living room with his smooth charm and perfect timing. But behind all that perfect show magic was TV's wildest surprise. Famous people who drank way too many before the cameras turned on. Back then, publicists didn't control everything, and there was no Twitter to post your mess-ups, so sometimes stars showed up at the studio in Burbank already super wasted. That made some legendary and super awkward TV moments. Today, we're counting down the 8 most famously drunk guests who slurred their way through The Tonight Show. Moments the bosses wished never happened, but we'll never forget. From Oscar winners who forgot where they were to huge stars who almost fell off the couch, these weren't just weird interviews. They were live TV about to crash. And the coolest part? Watching how Johnny handled the chaos. Sometimes super nice, sometimes clearly annoyed, but always quick and funny. That's why he's a legend. So grab a drink, maybe not as strong as theirs, and let's start the countdown of Johnny Carson's drunkest guests ever. What made these drunk moments so wild wasn't just seeing famous people messed up. It was watching calm, cool Johnny try to steer the ship when there was no edit button on live TV. He had to think fast when Oscar winners couldn't talk straight, directors rambled forever, or guests might do anything. Some hosts would freak out or cut it short, but Johnny usually mixed gentle nudges, smart commercial breaks, and funny side comments to Ed McMahon that pointed out the obvious without being mean. Of course, some interviews were too far gone to save, and a few stars got banned forever after total disasters. Let's look at 8 unforgettable times when Hollywood's biggest names clearly stopped at the bar too many times on the way to the studio.
Well, obviously, sex is not love.
Number 1. Truman Capote, the genius writer who couldn't talk straight. When Truman Capote walked out on The Tonight Show in 1980, everybody knew right away something was wrong. This super smart guy who wrote In Cold Blood and Breakfast at Tiffany's, famous for being witty and sharp, could barely walk from the curtain to the chair without tripping. What happened next was maybe the most uncomfortable 17 minutes ever on the show. The second Johnny said, "Great to have you tonight," it was obvious Capote was really drunk. His answer came out as total mush, so Johnny leaned in like, "Sorry, what?" And that was just the start. The whole interview, Capote slurred almost every word. Even Johnny, who was great at understanding nervous or accented guests, looked totally confused. When Johnny asked about his new work, Capote started a crazy long story that jumped everywhere and ended with a weird tale about Montgomery Clift that made no sense. The audience went from excited to super uncomfortable. People did nervous laughs when Capote suddenly turned to Ed McMahon and asked if he could sit on his lap because, "You look like a comfy teddy bear." Ed's shocked face is still famous. Johnny kept trying to save it, asking clear questions about writing, but Capote just went into weirder and weirder stuff. The worst part was about 12 minutes in. Capote tried to drink water, missed his mouth completely, and water ran down his chin and soaked his shirt. He just kept talking like nothing happened, while millions saw the huge wet spot. Finally, Johnny called for an early commercial, something he only did in emergencies. The camera caught him letting out a huge breath of relief when it cut away. Backstage, Johnny told the producer, "That wasn't an interview. That was a hostage situation." Capote never came back on the show again, even though he was a famous writer. It was extra sad because everyone knew the smart, classy Capote, and that night showed the problems he was hiding that later hurt his health and career. A tough reminder that drinking can mess up even the smartest people on live TV.
I would like to especially thank Mr. Pendrell Berman for not only...
Number 2. Shelley Winters, the human hurricane. If Johnny had a secret list of toughest guests, Shelley Winters would be near the top for sure. This 2-time Oscar winner was amazing in movies, but on The Tonight Show she brought a whole different drama, powered by drinks and zero chill. The staff knew she usually showed up already buzzed, so they had a plan. Never put her first, hope she sobered up a little backstage. It never worked. She just kept drinking in her dressing room. Her most infamous night was 1974, when she was supposed to talk about her autobiography. The second she walked out, wobbling in super high heels, we knew it was going to be wild. Johnny barely finished saying hi, and she started a random story, talking over him. It was total chaos. She kept cutting Johnny off, ignored his questions, and even talked straight to the audience like he wasn't there. When he tried to ask about the book, she waved him away and said, "Oh, Johnny, nobody cares. Let me tell you about Marlon Brando instead." Then another guest, a young actor, came out. Shelley wouldn't let Johnny talk to him. She kept interrupting, put her hand on the guy's knee, said he looked like young Errol Flynn, then loudly announced, "His movie isn't good, but he's cute." Johnny's jaw got tight. He was clearly annoyed. At one point he looked at Ed like, "Help?" and Ed just shrugged. The final straw? Shelley grabbed Johnny's note cards out of his hand, threw them over her shoulder and said, "You don't need these, I'm way more interesting." The cards flew everywhere and the audience gasped. Johnny ended it with another early commercial and later told the producer, "If she's booked again, I'm taking the night off." She was gone from the show for almost 3 years. When she finally came back in 1977, they made strict rules, noon taping so she couldn't drink much, and one more mess-up equals permanent ban. One writer said it best, "She didn't sip, she stormed."
Here was when I was sitting right here.
Number 3. Dean Martin. When the drunk act stopped being an act, Dean Martin built his whole cool guy image around looking a little tipsy. Martini in hand, tie loose, tiny sway when he sang. For years people swore it was fake. The glass had apple juice, the slur was on purpose. On The Tonight Show in the 60s and early 70s, he played it perfect, showed up buzzed, did funny drunk lines, everyone loved it. Johnny helped with jokes like, "How much you had tonight, Dean?" But by the mid-70s, things changed. After his son died and his marriage fell apart, the fake drinking turned real. It showed big time in 1976. He was the main guest to promote an NBC special, but the second he walked out, he stumbled hard, eyes blurry, slur way worse than the cute act. Johnny asked about the special, and Dean looked confused and said, "What special?" Then he thought he was on the Merv Griffin show. Johnny joked, "I can put on a wig if it helps." But Dean just stared and asked, "What time is it?" 2 minutes in. 7 painful minutes later, Dean randomly started singing, stopped to ask if it was live, asked where Sammy Davis Jr. was, even though Sammy wasn't booked. Johnny ended it fast. Backstage, Johnny looked really worried and told the producer, "That wasn't the Dean we know." After that, Dean barely came back. It was super sad. Everyone loved the fun drunk character, but seeing the real pain was rough.
Not seen you for, well, it's got to be 6, 7 years. Just about.
Number 4. Raymond Burr Perry. Mason totally falls apart. Raymond Burr was the king of cool and classy in the 50s and 60s. Perry Mason never lost a case, always perfect. So when he showed up drunk in 1970, it shocked everyone. He was 40 minutes late, hair messy, tie crooked, face red, had to grab the chair to sit. Johnny asked a simple question about work, and Burr started a 10-minute ramble about his orchids and greenhouses in Fiji, slurring and losing the point. When Johnny finally asked about Perry Mason, Burr stared and said,
well, it's got to be
"What's
6,
your name again?"
7 years.
Even though Johnny just introduced him. Johnny saved it like a pro, shook his hand and said, "Johnny Carson, nice to meet you." The audience went from nervous laughs to dead silence. Afterward, Johnny said Burr went from courtroom hero to drunk mess in one night. It was Burr's last time on the show, and they made a new rule. Staff had to check every guest right before they went on to make sure they were okay.
The story before you realized you'd been had.
We had an announcer I had for years.
Number 5. Orson Welles. The genius who could still blow your mind drunk. Orson Welles was different. He came on as the super smart guy talking Shakespeare and movies like a professor. Number 6. Zsa Zsa Gabor. Vodka plus diamonds, else chaos. Zsa Zsa was always the glamorous lady with the thick accent and tons of jewelry, super flirty and fun. But one night in 1973, she had way too much vodka first. She almost tripped walking out, tried to kiss Johnny's ear instead of cheek, accent 10 times thicker. She kept giving long, messy answers, then tried to slide super close to Johnny and almost fell off the couch. She yelled, "Johnny, you're making moves on me!" and kissed him full on the mouth with bright red lipstick. Then she showed off her bracelet to the camera and said it cost more than all the NBC bosses together. When Johnny tried to talk about her book, she put her hand on his knee and whispered loud, "Why talk boring books when we can talk about your bedroom?" Later, she tried to stand up for drama and almost face-planted. Johnny and a stagehand caught her. He ended it fast and helped her off stage himself. Backstage, he said, "She came for charm, but vodka showed up first." They still had her back later, but always scheduled her early. The Zsa Zsa Protocol.
Lee is a wonderful fellow, probably one of the few actors in the world.
Number 7. Oliver Reed. Too wild even for Johnny. Oliver Reed was a British actor famous for drinking like a fish and crazy behavior. He was booked in 1973 but never made it on the couch. Johnny canceled him. Oliver had been on other talk shows doing gymnastics, pouring whiskey and plants, almost taking his pants off on air. Producers showed Johnny the tapes and he said, "Nope, too risky for live TV." Oliver trash-talked Johnny for being scared, but the ban stayed forever. Even when Oliver got hot again with Gladiator, Johnny was already retired. He was the one guest too crazy even for Carson.
It's nice to see you looking bright and chipper. Do you remember your first
Number 8. Peter O'Toole. The classiest drunk ever. Peter O'Toole, Lawrence of Arabia star, was a brilliant actor and legendary drinker who never hid it. In 1978, he came to promote Caligula after a long lunch, aka tons of scotch. At first he seemed okay, then started complaining about the lights. Next thing, he grabbed Johnny's pen, jumped up, and started a full fencing lesson right on stage. "Stand up, Johnny, I'll teach you." For 3 minutes, Johnny tried to fence with a pen while Peter yelled, "Lunge like your virtue depends on it." After that, he told wild stories about drinking with Richard Harris and owning a racehorse for 3 days. Johnny just let him go because it was hilarious and smart at the same time. Peter stayed a favorite guest because even super drunk, he was charming, funny, and still sounded like Shakespeare. One writer called him the most eloquent drunk in TV history. And that's the 8 wildest drunk moments on Johnny Carson.